Hello, everybody. Good to see that you've seen my comment there. So in case anybody didn't see it, just please feel free, you don't have to, but feel free to just write in and say where you are, where you're coming from, which is absolutely great. Nice to know that people are coming from, popping in and seeing this from all over, which is always lovely. Could somebody do me a favor and just send me a quick message to say that you can see and hear me okay? I don't really want to get going until I can just confirm that everything is all right. I can be seen and heard all okay. While I'm waiting for somebody to pop a message in to say that you can see and hear me fine, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Mark. Thank you, Rose, for for saying that you can. Everything is okay. My name is Mark. I've been a teacher. Probably a few of you have seen me before. I've been a teacher now for 34 and a half years. And I'm still enjoying it, which is a pretty good thing. Hello from East London. So I was south of the river, but yeah, so pretty close to you. I'm coming in here from Cheltenham, which is a very nice town, about an hour and a half west of London, I suppose. Very nice countryside. Do visit it sometime. Okay, so let's get on. As you can see, this seminar is going to be about professionalism in the classroom. So we're going to be talking about quite a lot today. So I think probably without further ado, I shall crack on. These are the basic things that we'll be talking about today. There are a lot of them, as you can see, and I think I'll probably run through some of the earlier ones fairly quickly. We'll see how that one goes. First thing to say, and this is the same, of course, from anywhere, any industry that you may be in, what you put in, you get out. I would say, in fact, that's even more of the case when you are teaching, as some of you probably know, because what you put in, you see coming back at you with what you get. If any of you have been a wage slave in an office, and whether you're doing a great job or a terrible job, nobody's noticing. Here, and everybody else knows really, really quickly. So it's I think it's one of the wonderful things about teaching is the kind of instant reward, if you like, for your hard work and your diligence. Okay, so we'll look through this one: admin, lesson preparation, interaction with students, learning networks, and CPD, continuing professional development. First one here, administration. Yeah, surprise, surprise. When you walk into a school for the first time, even though you've probably been in there a few times and maybe met a few people, you still kind of feel 8 years old, like you're going to a new school. I don't think that ever goes away, which I think that's again a pretty good thing. It kind of challenges you as well, but a bit of preparation will help keep you organized. And I think what's great here is also, and it helps you, I think, with an approach in a new school, is think about, first of all, you can think about your, if you like, your weaknesses and what you're not so good at, and think, okay, how am I going to overcome that? And we'll talk a little bit about that very shortly. But also think about, I'm not sure the word is really entitlements, but certainly think about what you should expect as well. I think it's a great idea, rather than thinking about where you're going to, oh, I want to do a good job, I want everybody to like me. Think about how this should come about and what the obligations of the school and the other teachers are towards you. It tends to help you to overcome the nerves, and I'll talk a bit about those expectations in different areas as we go. So we're going to look through some of the specifics of administration, and some of these, of course, again, should be provided by the school. Your timetable, so which of course involves your curriculum as well, so who you're teaching, where you're teaching them, knowing how to master the tech, always an important thing. And of course, your own materials, and if you're teaching different classes throughout the day, making sure that everything is good and separate. A reflection section. Now, this is again one of the great things about teaching. Reflection should be, how did it go? And if you're new to teaching, you'll realize very quickly that one of the most wonderful things about it is you never get to the end of it. You never do it perfectly. And so a lot of the things that I'll talk about in terms of professionalism today, I think might make you go, oh, blimey, that's a lot to think about. It is, if you were expected to do all of them all of the time. In my third of a century of teaching, I've never managed that, and I don't think I'm going to now. These are all things that you work towards, and you'll never fully achieve all of them. And that's absolutely fine. It's what the great thing about what should keep teaching fresh, and what keeps it as a wonderful challenge throughout your teaching career, however long that may be. Okay, so the timetable, as I say, this should be very much on the onus of the school, of course, to provide this. So we'll look through other things. Your scheme of work. Now, when you go into a class, you are not, of course, just booted through the door and expected to teach them. You are expected to know, or you should be informed as to what you are expected to do, what the challenges are moving forward. A register for each class, of course, also provided. A lesson plan, again, normally provided, but if not, you maybe think about providing your own as well. The worksheets, the material. It says keep this file neat and up to date. Easier said than done. My normal principle is, if I'm doing handouts, and of course increasingly we don't do handouts nowadays, but they are still very, very useful. Still, a student with a pencil and a piece of paper is still a pretty powerful learning tool. If you have any spare copies at the end, get rid of them, hold on to one copy, put that away, make sure you know where it is, in not only in your paper file, but make sure you know where it is remotely, and it'll always come back. And this, over years, will help you to reduce the admin and the looking for things, etc. Another point to be made about that in terms of reflection is you might actually keep a note of everything, even when you've been teaching for a long time. Part, I think, of your professionalism is you still think about it. I still do some teaching, not a huge amount, but it is still the case that every lesson gets thought about. And you still can look back and think, yeah, you know what, there was something there. And it's a great thing with lesson plans. And again, now you keep things remotely, it's a good idea as well. With materials, is you might think, oh, you know what, I had this something that I was doing. Well, that didn't quite work. Or maybe you had sort of 8 questions, but everybody was stuck on one of the questions. Why was that? And then you can go back and, of course, you can change maybe that material so it'll be better for next time. That's what reflection can help you do. And it makes your next lesson using the same materials much, much better. Okay, so sorry, I'm losing track of where we are already. Also, of course, the registers and the schemes of work are very, very important if you are if you're teaching different classes as well. It depends on the school you go into. Sometimes you might have the same class 9 till 12 every day, or you might have different Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday might all be different as well. Okay, the bibliography, always important. Nothing worse than finding a teaching online site and losing the link. If you find it, keep the reference in an online file. Don't forget to acknowledge the author of the resource, and always remember to research the usage. It's a copyright, open source material, Creative Commons, etc. This is all important stuff, and it becomes instinctive after a little while. But when you're when you're getting started. Okay, so I've just got a question here, and I'm not going to answer it right now, but thank you for the question. I should have said that. I will crack on throughout. Anytime you think of a question, please put it up straight away. There will be time for questions and answers afterwards. I will try not to answer any and not disturb my own flow. Sorry, I should have said that from the very start. Any questions you've had, either note them down or write them straight out on the comments. That's absolutely fine. Okay, right then. As we go on. Lesson preparation. Now, I'll go with the second bullet point here first. 1 hour face-to-face equals 2 hours lesson preparation. Now, that is partially true, but it's also the case that the more preparation you do, the less preparation you have to do. So, for example, if you have a good record of everything that you've done in the past, you'll find that you recycle it in other lessons, or you'll find versions of it that are recyclable as well. I have to say, AI is an incredible tool for a lot of the things that you can do, and they can really help you to individualize your classes, your lessons as well. So, for instance, if you have a gap fill, you can think about material, or you can think about vocabulary that you've used before, maybe emergent vocabulary that's come up in the lesson, which I'll talk about shortly again, and you can drop that into a gap fill. I would say the greatest thing with AI, as we all know, is it is not fail safe. So one of the biggest parts of your professionalism will be, if you want to save time by using AI, great idea. You nevertheless take the time to go through what it's given you, and don't just cut, paste, print verbatim. You look through it and you make sure that it fulfills the needs of what you have looked for. This is such a banana skin, shall we say. When it says here to prepare a lesson plan and a backup plan for anything that could go wrong, that sounds kind of terrifying, because it does sound a bit like for 3 hours of teaching, you have to prepare 6 hours. It's more, I think, a thought process than it is 3 hours of material and a further 3 hours of material. But I do think it's a case that you do need to think about worst case scenarios as well. And I would say for the biggest one for that is always the tech going down. Don't just rely on that. And if it does, don't faff about at the front of the class trying to get it on. Right, okay, you're ready. Forget about the screen. Let's get on with what we're going to do. And I think that's the biggest single one that you need to always prepare for. Always, of course, if you over prepare and you make too much material, great, because you've got stuff for the next lesson as well, or you will use it at some point. And when you use it at some point, of course, that's saving you a lot of material preparation for that particular lesson. So I think there is very much the case that nothing is wasted, and that's always important, that should be the case. I think you do need to set aside time for finding extra resources. You need to get that properly. If you rush, you find that the lesson plan doesn't quite go how you wanted it to. You go over, or you don't manage to cover everything. And I think this is a great point about emergent language. And part of, for me, of professionalism is that what will happen in a class is that things will not follow sort of the curriculum. Students, if they're interested, and that's your job to make them interested, will then try to express themselves, and they try to express themselves, and maybe they think, okay, they haven't quite got the word for that, or they haven't got the phrase for that, so they're trying to express something, and you go, oh, that's great, that's fantastic, but what you've done this, and what they have done is strategize to come out with something. You say, actually, there's a brilliant expression or a brilliant word, and it's this. And that's not in any kind of curriculum. It's not in the time. It's nowhere. It's come out of what they wanted to say. And so you have to grasp that and go, right, this came from you. This is what we call emergent language in the lesson. Don't just explain it. You note it down. You make sure that everyone's clear on it. And then it's there in your little bank. Depending on if you're working remotely, or if you have a remote connection with your class, even though it's face-to-face, you might have a little store, an Excel sheet or something like that, where you're putting in all this emergent language so they can go back and remind it afterwards. If your lesson runs under by 5 minutes, as happens, Great, you've got a store of, okay, right, shut your books, piece of pen, paper, or maybe, two groups, two boards, or, half of the board or something like that. Right, what's this word that we did before? And then you give a definition, and then you've got a nice little quiz there. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and everybody goes out with a smile on their face. You would not believe how any student, however cool, and this for me includes teaching army officers, so sometimes senior officers in uniforms, it doesn't matter. They all revert to 8-year-old children when you give them a game and a competition between two sides of the class. A lovely way of getting everybody out smiling, and it helps you cover a gap. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you've fallen short in the lesson, it's fine. Or maybe an exercise has come to a sort of natural halt, and you think, oh, I haven't really got time to do this next part. I'd better, rather than hurrying through it, I'd rather just leave it on one side and do it next time. Great, you've got things that fill in that are really beneficial and really fun for them as well. So that's where professionalism that you've done beforehand then comes back and helps you out in subsequent lessons and subsequent exercises. Okay, so we'll go on. There's not much else I can really add to this particular one, but the creation of extra resources, I've just mentioned, for instance, how you can do that with emergent language. It's also maybe looking at existing materials and then adapting them for another class, because this is important. Time management will never, ever cease to be an issue. And personally, I would prefer to do an exercise properly and to let it come to a natural conclusion when it's the right time to do it, than try to either over lengthen it or shorten it because you're trying to get something in. Try to think about the needs of the students first before you think about the needs of the timetable, the curriculum, whatever else. Students always come first on this, and you can always find time to do things later as well. If you find that you're constantly not covering everything that you need to, then that is part of your reflection. You go back, think about it, and think, okay, how do I get around that? Which I shall again come up with a little bit later. Interaction with students. This is such a big one, and it's one that tends to go wrong at some point or other, and then you get it right later. You're not. Now, I have to point out, I'm from Cheltenham, I'm from English. I don't say why don't be a mom. We have the expression mum with a U. Sorry, little bit that irritates English speakers. Apologies for any US or American English speakers. Don't be a mum, a dad, or a friend. You are a teacher. There is a gap. And if you try to dissolve that gap too much, people will step over it in ways that are not beneficial to you, to them, or to the class as well. A huge one: put aside issues at home. Whatever's been going on in your life, you go through the door, those are all behind you. They're not the concerns, and they should never encroach on a lesson. I find, or maybe I should say I found when I was much younger, this was never actually a problem. There was something wonderful about being in a classroom that did actually allow you to do that without any particular effort. Look the part. That is, I think, a fantastically important one. Now, I would say with this as well, don't always take the keys for this off your fellow teachers, who can sometimes dress down fairly spectacularly. Maintain the school protocols, and maybe, if anything, go slightly above the minimum on this. You don't need to turn up in a suit and tie or an evening dress, but you should be smart, and you should look like somebody that actually can function in the real world as well. Be punctual. So obvious. Now, the way I tend to think that this is good is you should be there well before. If you need to get the text sorted out, have your materials all sorted out, that's absolutely fine. One thing that you can do at that point is, if you can sort everything out, now you have to make sure you're not doing this with small kids who may go in and muck about with your stuff, but if you've got a responsible class, get everything sorted out, then move out. Then you can come back in 1 minute before the lesson, let everybody settle themselves down, but everything's ready to go. Don't be the person that goes in there 1 minute before, and then you're mucking about with syncing your computer to the screen or whatever else. That's your time to do that, not their time. So I'll see if I can crack onto this one. If you do this and get this right, you will absolutely you'll sort of nail being a teacher very, very quickly. I think it's important with this that you think about the individuality as well. Now, this can work in a couple of ways. First one, you maintain a learner-centered classroom. That means that your preparation, for example, will help you to make sure that you conduct things and you set up exercises, you give instructions in as simple a manner as possible. One of the things that I notice when I do classroom observations is that you get teachers who are sort of trying to give the instructions, or they're trying to give an explanation, and they're saying it not particularly well. So you can see the students aren't getting it, and so they say it again. But of course, the second time they say it in slightly more complex language, which actually makes the problem worse because the students are all, struggling to keep up with it. And then it kind of goes on. It goes into a vicious cycle of saying it in a different way, and each time being less understood than the previous time was, and they didn't understand it in the first place. So really think not about the whole lesson, that's not possible, but keep the instinct there. And also I'd say for ICQs, your instructions or concepts, if you like, you really make sure that those are absolutely clear. So CCQs, ICQs are really important. You keep those as simple as you possibly can. So they're not thinking about the language, they're thinking about the task, they're thinking about the understanding they've got of the concept they've just done. And that also means that you don't have to be as patient because they're getting it the first time. Confidence. I think confidence when you're a new teacher is actually quite difficult to get to. So again, I think little things like dressing the right way really help with this. Don't try to be somebody that you're not, be yourself, and be approachable. And being approachable, I'll just go on to a little bit about that as well. I would say the individualization of a class, and this is, I think, the single biggest thing that you'll do. So, and I'll give you an example of this. You set up an exercise, and off they go. They're working in pairs or something like that. What's your job at that point? You can stand at the front, reorganizing your papers and taking a breath, or you can get out there, listen to everybody if you can, and you listen to everybody you hear. Try in a class, every time you hear in every class, at some point or other, listen to your student as an individual, and then you can say, oh great, that was really good, oh just one little thing, like that. And then of course you can make a note of it as well. You don't need to make a note of everything, just say, oh, there was just a little phrase there or something like that. Now that's how you make friends, because they've then had a little bit of one-to-one. They've had you saying well done, you've given them the name, you've made one little correction for them, and then maybe hopefully you've noted it as well, so it comes back in the whole class as well. And that is how, again, when I say you make friends, that's how you friends is not the right word, this is how you garner respect from your students, because they have been listened to as an individual. Their individual mistakes or whatever else may they be, or their individual strengths, things that you might praise as well, have actually been noted and reflected on in the lesson. And this is the biggest single thing I think that you can do to make a class go well, and to make sure they come back the next time paying you the respect that one would hope you have earned at this point, rather than just demand by dint of the fact that you're actually at the front of the class. So I think that's a real big one. From that as well, I would also say talk to your students. But if you talk to your students and they're telling you stuff about their lives, make a mental note of it, or maybe even make a physical note of it. If somebody tells you about a family member being unwell, come back the next day, and actually, the next day or 2 days later, or if you have a quiet word with them, say, oh yeah, how's your whoever, how are they going, something like that. Do make notes of these things. Don't just let it go in one ear and out the other. Then they know that you're just nodding at the front and you're not really listening to them. So I'd say that's a real big one to think about as well. Let's go on with this. Sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit with this by showing genuine interest. Positive feedback, of course. Positive feedback is very much the idea that if you can possibly set up a dynamic in your class, now this will depend on the culture of the class as well, but positive feedback means you've said, great, so and so, you've done really well here. That's brilliant. Well done. There's just this little thing that we need to look at. And that little thing that you're going to correct is something that's for everybody, because somebody's tried something, they've created a need for something by not saying it quite right, and everybody benefits from that. If you can really get a dynamic in there of mistakes are good, then that is fantastic. And that comes down to the last bit of this, which is comes from everything I've said. Listen, 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 because class is going to be mainly about how you interact by what you hear rather than what you say. It's not a performance, which is we'll come on to again in a little while. So give encouragement. People make mistakes. That's great. Of course, you don't have favorites. It's not so easy to do, actually. Some people don't do themselves any favors in a classroom, but again, you keep praising, you keep believing, and in general, this will work. This will work itself through perfectly fine. A sense of humor, of course. Now, a sense of humor is can be a dangerous thing as well. There is a point where you can start going for the joke rather than going for the teaching. It's a point, I think, that most young teachers, including myself once upon a time, especially male teachers, of course, because we're the show-offs, start thinking of it as a performance rather than as a lesson. And it's great. You can go in there, you say a couple of silly things, and then you come out, and if you're actually honest with yourself, you think, that was kind of fun, wasn't it? Because I said something silly, and 6 of the students fell about laughing. And don't think about the fact that actually I had 12 students in the class. Quite a lot of them were looking at me blankly because they didn't know what they were talking, because they didn't know what I was talking about. A sense of humor is absolutely fine, but keep it all very much in proportion, because you're not a clown, you're not a compere, you're a teacher. Familiarizing yourself with the safeguarding policy. Now, this is part of I suppose, a wider area. Of course, you familiarize yourself with such things. Also, do remember that it is the school's responsibility to put safeguarding policy in front of you. Have a quick look also, not just at the policy itself, which should be very, very simple for a teacher for the reasons I'll mention in a second, but also check when it was updated. These are things that actually reflect very importantly on a school. If somebody hasn't looked at it since 2005, then is this actually important to them? Because it should be. Or is it just something where they try and tick a box for for whatever compliance authorities that they have to keep happy? Whatever the safeguarding policy is, do remember that you should not be under any obligation to act unilaterally about anything to do with safeguarding. There should be safeguarding experts who you will refer matters to, and they will make the decisions. It should never be down to you to be the person who has to make decisions concerning anybody who's having any problems above and beyond those of within the educational realm. So do make sure that you look at it, but also make sure that you know who the people are that you need to speak to on that one. It shouldn't be something that is a stress for you. Okay. This will happen when you are a new teacher. You can't be expected to have all of the grammar, all of the lexis sort of like hardwired into your mind. So I think honesty at this point is important, and it also does come with preparation as well. You should know the grammar point that you are teaching, and the next time that you do it, you'll know a little bit better, but you'll still have to prepare it. And then after a while, you'll find you don't need to prepare actually the knowledge of the grammar point, because it'll be in there. But that is a process, and it takes time. You can't be expected to do it straight away. So instead, again, be upfront and sort of say, oh, that's a really good question. I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at it. And then again, note that in your reflections so you actually do follow it up, which is a really important thing to do. If you say you're going to do it and take the time to do it and give a portion of the next lesson over to that. That was a great question that so and so asked. Right, let's just have a quick look at this, because this is I want everybody to actually think about this as well. Learn composure. I sometimes think that composure is kind of either easy or impossible. It comes as second nature or not. If you really can't learn it, then maybe teaching isn't for you. I would say maybe a better one from this is kind of the idea of not taking things home with you. Possibly one of the reasons why we do this is it should be something that's great. It's a pleasure. It's challenging, of course, but it shouldn't be coming through the door when you go home. You should be able to shut the door and forget about these things, apart from the nice things, and there's many of those that you will keep and hopefully will stay with you for a long time to come. Okay, online interaction. Always. Now, the vast majority of you being considerably younger than me will find all this stuff kind of second nature in terms of breakout rooms, Kahoot, TeacherMade, etc. Really useful things to have, and the more that you can use them, the better. And again, great ways of making sure with breakout rooms, a great way of making sure you can have that one-to-one, one-to-two interaction, so you get the chance to listen to them and you get the chance to give them that feedback. There's no reason why this should be any different in an online lesson compared to a face-to-face lesson. Flexibility, of course, but your preparations should, of course, also reflect that flexibility. Especially, of course, if you're maybe using your qualification to travel from country to country, where things will be different, things will change all the time, and it's one of the wonderful things about what you're doing, that you can do that, but it doesn't make your teaching career any easier. But that's fine as well. You learn other strengths by doing this. Okay. Your personal learning network. Now, I would say, having been a head teacher in a couple of schools, I would say that most schools that you go, and obviously I'm talking about physical schools here, can sort of be divided. You will have lots of wonderful professional people who want to help people. You'll also tend to have a hardcore of people who have been doing it for too long, have not upskilled, have not decided to move on in their career, and are just doing the same stuff that they were 5-10 years previously. And any attempt on the part of the school or the management to actually involve any innovation will be just greeted with, oh, typical, they're slave driving us. They're probably not, but people just do get to a point where they complain about anything. These people are poison. Stay away from them. Find the people who are engaged, interested teachers, make friends with them, because they want to make friends with you. It's lovely as a teacher to have younger, or not necessarily younger, but less experienced teachers who actually want to pick your brains, and who want to kick ideas around. It's one of the pleasures of being a teacher, is that you have people that you can help in that way. So that mentor can be a buddy. Now, it might be somebody who is officially given to you by the school, and that's again the mark of a good school, is that they will put somebody on one side. You may then gravitate towards various people who are happy to help you as well. Lesson observation, really try to encourage people to come in and see you. Again, a decent school should have somebody going in and seeing you, particularly when you're a new teacher. And if you can get that beyond just the director of studies, i.e. the head teacher, get other people to do it when they get the chance, then it's a wonderful help. And you, sooner or later, will probably be called on to do the same thing. And when you do, make sure that you keep your criticism, shall we say, or your comments about that teaching positive as well. It's a great thing. But again, it's a wonderful thing that you can actually generate these networks from people who are passionate about what they do and they want to help other people be as good as possible as well. Online, yes, there should be plenty of online encounter groups as well, where you can swap stories. EFL, well, good question there. English as a foreign language, to be compared with English as a second language, but that's a different matter. English as a foreign language, so basically, that's the TEFL Academy, teaching English as a foreign language. Sorry, that was a question that came up there. I thought I'd clarify it now. Okay. All of these, of course, are to do with your CPD. Again, any good school should offer CPD sessions, or at the very least, it should have somebody who's looking out for things online that you can work with. You're clearly interested in this because you are, you're here after all. So you're clearly interested in this. To familiarize yourself with the latest teaching methodologies, this is great. And as you get more experience, you tend not to take these things on board in their entirety. But we're very lucky, I think, in TEFL. There's a proper academic arm where research goes on, and it's and conclusions are drawn. And we're lucky in that way, because among teaching, we have one of the most dynamic sort of sets of ideas and changing ideas as well on how to do this. Lots of things that you can think, okay, that's worth a try. Might work for you, might not, but that's great. Conferences and lectures are also important, and again, like this one, a lot of them nowadays are conducted online. Also worth making a note of what you've done for these, because always things that you can add to your CV at a later date. Because schools are interested in teachers who are interested not just in the job, but in the processes, the methodologies behind it as well. Lots and lots of stuff to read. I actually feel, to a certain extent, these slides nowadays are kind of written by somebody like me from an earlier time. So much of this is nowadays online. A school, again, should provide some of the magazines and journals. Anyway, they should normally have subscriptions, either online again or paper copies. Courses, again, are everywhere, and one of the best ones for this could be business English, which is a great thing. And you do not need to be a business person to teach business English. That's, unfortunately, I think we've debunked that particular myth a long time ago. And technology, yeah, again, for some of you this will be difficult. For some of you it will be effortless, and you'll probably do it just out of interest anyway. Okay. And the last one here. I do think that, first of all, you can get swallowed up in this, and you can find yourself, preparing things at 10, 11 o'clock at night. And to a certain extent, I still have this problem myself. I started, I don't teach full time now, but I started quite an important course on Monday. And I kind of used to it now because I've been doing it for a long time. But still, the night before the course, I sleep for about 3 hours. The next night, maybe 4, and it gradually gets on. And by week 2, I'm back to some form of equilibrium on this. But I think about it, and I over-prepare, and I do all of those things. Fortunately, I couldn't do that for the whole duration of the course, or I would be out of my mind. And it does sort of like die down after a little while. You can get your life swallowed up in this, and it's kind of that the glory of this, as I said, is the fact that you never teach a perfect lesson. But I think ideas like reflection really help you to maintain that balance. You think if anything's happened in the classroom and you're unhappy about it, you reflect on it. You note it, depending on your memory and your admin skills, is whether you make a mental note of it or you actually write it down, and then it's gone. And then you act on it, but you don't have to think about it any longer. It really should be that you've left it behind. And we do tend, in EFL, we do tend to get quite a few people who have worked in, say higher education or state school education, and they come into EFL because you've got a better chance of getting that balance maybe than you have in other aspects of language teaching. And again, it's a cliche, but it's most certainly most certainly true. What you put in is what you get out, and I can't think of anything that could be more true than that for teaching TEFL. There's also a few other ones as well, just to mention them as well while I kick on. Q&A, by the way, you can start adding any questions that you want now. In a moment, I'll click forward as well, so you've got the QR code. It'd be great if you could just scan the QR code, which will allow you to give feedback on this as well. So just a few basics on this one while I'm waiting for your Q&A. Do try to attend seminars, lectures whenever you can. Subscribe to EFL blocks, which tend to be free to do. Check if your school offers CPD. Find resources that are related to your specialization. There's often think about updating stuff that you don't specialize in. And there's things like the how-to series that are really, really important. They're from Pearson. You can choose, sort of how to teach English, how to teach pronunciation, vocabulary, etc., etc. The magazines are EFL, Demand High. Demand High is absolutely brilliant. I'll tell you about that in a second. English Language Teaching Global Blog. The British Council, of course, always a useful one. The Demand High, I'll just mention that a little bit because it's great. It's about 10 years old now, but it's two of the main teachers or two of the main leading lights in the academic world. Just pop that up. Thank you for putting that one up. Which is the idea that when you come into a classroom, and you don't just a very, very familiar thing, I should say, is that you think, okay, you ask a question, somebody gives you the answer, and that's great and fine, you move on. Well, is that enough? Is it enough for you to ask a question and for somebody just to give you the answer, to give you the right words in the right order? Is that enough? Maybe, maybe not. So, okay, try and put it back. Try to really work on them. Try to work on them really hard. So you're saying, okay, that's great. Now, say it in a different way. Say it not with he, but with you. Try to make it into a question. Try to make it into a negative. Say it very quietly. Say it loud. Say it angrily. So look at the stress patterns on the word. What are the stresses that they're hitting on both on the words and of course on the syllables within the words. So go back, put the onus on them to really work hard on this. Okay, first question, and it's thank you. That's I'd like to say that's a great question. It probably is, but I'm already on the defensive, so thanks for that. This is a really good question. I think probably it's more of a general thing. I would say, and I sort of maybe look back on this and think, one of the things that I think I've probably found difficult, it's probably when I was younger, is every now and then you actually meet a truly unpleasant person. Most of the time you meet people, if they're a bit difficult in the class, it's because they're quite bouncy or they're a bit of the class clown, they want a bit of the attention, something like that. Then, but sometimes you meet somebody who comes in, you're thinking their only role in life here is to try to disrupt your lesson, not because they're full of energy or anything like that, but because they just want to wreck the lesson. And I think at that point, then you need to go upstairs on people. If there's nothing that you can do about it, there is a point at which you have to remember that yes, it's your responsibility to make sure that the lesson is interesting, engaging. But when you've done everything that you possibly can, and still there's somebody there who's just trying to take the pin out, pop the balloon, you have to take it somewhere else. I would also say my biggest thing, and I think I've sort of touched on this a little bit, is also not beating myself up about stuff. Stuff goes wrong in a class, or it doesn't go as well as you want. But you've really got to, like I say, reflect, draw some sort of conclusion. No conclusion is ever conclusive, because you always change what you think about something, but get it to enough of an endpoint that you thought about it for something that you've got. Okay, what's my learning point from this? So I think it's turning negatives into into positives in terms of moving it all, moving things forward. So I'd say those are probably the most difficult things, and the single most difficult thing, and it continues to be, is what goes on between my own ears. And I think that's the case for a lot of teachers, and in a sense it should be, because when you stop thinking about what's going on in the class, when you just walk out the door and you've forgotten about the class already, time to try something else. So I'd say that would be my biggest thing. Okay, I hope that answers your question. If you want something more specific, please feel free to come back with something else. Okay, so I'm guessing you're somebody who feels that you're some way behind the curve in terms of modernizing your teaching. I would say don't be intimidated by it, and don't think that you have to overcome that gap in days. You do a little bit, you find something small that you can do that, and then move on, and then take the next step. Don't be afraid to ask. And something I would say, a big one, because I'm a bit of a technophobe, but I would say that the biggest one would be when somebody comes in, when you walk down the corridor going, help, my computer doesn't work. Don't just get somebody to fix it. Actually try to work out what they have done and ask them what they did. So you're actually making a mental note of, okay, I've got something that I can do with it. Don't just go, oh, thank goodness it's done. Right, now I can get on with teaching my lesson, because you'll only be asking the same question. You'll only be asking the same question again. And that's part of the education for you as well. And so I'd say that's kind of a big one. Right, I'm trying to take these in order now, because there's quite a lot of them, which is wonderful, for which thank you. Maybe because I've got a kind of a Eurocentric idea of this, I would probably say that English teachers abroad has increased, and one of the reasons for that is now that fewer people, with Brexit and with the international situation, fewer people are coming to this country, and so this is a great thing that you've got. What it used to be with the qualification that you've got, what it would used to be is that this would not be sufficient for you to go into a British Council approved English language school in England, because you would have to have an observed component from the awarding body, which would be, I'm trying to think what they were now. Trinity and Cambridge were the two awarding bodies. Of course, yours is online, so you don't have that observed element. This is much less relevant compared to what it was 20 years ago, because far fewer people are coming to England to study in a school, and therefore your qualification that you get here is more relevant, and so you can take much more advantage of it. And I think, again, English teachers abroad has increased, and of course, although I say that the teaching in an English language school in the UK has decreased greatly, the online element remains. If you are a native English speaker, or a very good level, or if you have a very good level of English, this is also important. And again, always that constant learning as well. Oh, blimey, this is bringing up all sorts of uncomfortable stuff from my past. I would say the one that I would have, and I've mentioned it, I think, is listen. Just listen. Let the students guide it. So it really improves things so much when, and I've mentioned this already, but when you're working off the students and hearing what they say, and then working and planning according to their utterances and therefore their needs as well. So you're not just listening for what they say right, you're listening for what they say wrong, or encouraging them to say things wrong if they can't say them right, in order to help them overcome the gap between what they say, which is what they want to say, not what you're teaching them. That's what they want to actually express, and then helping them overcome that gap to their own, to improve the things that they are the ones that are showing you that they need them. So I would say, in a word, listen. And I noticed it's something when I was a head teacher, and we used to do this thing of saying, okay, if you wanted to express English language teaching in a word, or what would it be? And most teachers would say perform, and the best teachers would say listen. Took me a long time to pick that up, far longer than it should have. Okay. I think it's very much who you are. I prefer teaching face to face, because that online teaching didn't exist when I was younger. So it's kind of what I'm used to. People who are more people are more relaxed with online. It has to be said now that even when I started teaching online, which was probably about 15 years ago now, internet connections are far worse than they are now. And so now you've got a great deal more reliance and confidence in it. I would say it's really your personal circumstances. The great thing about online is, you don't have to dress apart from your neck upwards. The preparation in terms of actually, the commute or whatever else, depending on where you live, can be it's carried out. So in terms of convenience, it can be absolutely great. I'd say the disadvantage with online teaching can often be the competition. I noticed there's various websites where people are offering conversation lessons for £2 an hour and things like that. If you want to actually make a living out of it, you need to find the angles to actually make online teaching work for you. But that's, like I say, if it's convenience, if you've got kids, and you can't, and you know that you need to be out of the house at 3 o'clock to pick them up or whatever else, then online is absolutely brilliant. If you can get a mixture, I think that's marvelous. That's marvelous as well. So yeah, I think it really depends on your individual circumstances. But remember, just because you do one doesn't stop you from doing the other, either at the same time or at a later date as well. They're certainly not exclusive concepts, which is important. Okay. I would go back over quite a few of the things that I've said here, but they're probably worth saying again. You have to look at yourself and what you can do from this. A big one for students who are unfocused, I think, is change things up very quickly. So you're making the activities quite short. And you're handing things out, so they've actually got tasks to fulfill. Again, these are times, as is always the way, the stuff that often makes you the best, the stuff that improves you as a teacher is the stuff that's the most challenging. So I think you have to, first of all, you have to embrace it. In terms of discipline, the biggest single one is, again, that word composure. You never ever raise your voice to a student, but you should be able to have some form of recourse in terms of talking to other people in the class itself. Like I say, make the exercises shorter, jump it onto the next thing. Make sure also that you establish a contract. So at the very first class, before some of the individuals have they need to find their feet before they start mucking about. So that first lesson, okay, what are we going to do? What do we all agree to do? What do we all agree not to do? So, for instance, obviously punctuality is one that everybody's going to agree to. Not using their mobile phones. Often in most schools, of course, that will be a prerequisite anyway. We're not going to shout out. We're not going to use our own language. If we want to speak to the class, we're going to put our hands up in the first place. So therefore, you have the right to say, okay, so-and-so, you speak now, you so-and-so, you're being the conductor, something like that. Like I say, if somebody's determined, they will, you know, they'll do what they can. But the more, even if you do have that person, the more you create something where everybody else is actually focused and is actually interested, the more that person is isolated and just looks like an idiot, rather than, you know, and then they tend to go back into the group as well, rather than being the person who's actually succeeded in breaking things up. So I would say, especially, just keep things short and sharp. Competitions, again, are great. Like I say, anybody, they want to win more than they want to show off even. So I'd say that's a wonderful one. And again, that's such a lovely thing, for actually, they've come out of a class, they're all smiling, they had a good time. And because they had a good time, maybe it wasn't all a good time, but they finished on a real high, and then they just come in with a better attitude the next day because they enjoyed it, they had a good time. You know, why would they want to then wreck it by being silly? I'd say also, this is probably why I don't teach kids, don't be too pompous, don't be too aware of your own importance as well. Again, that's a stat that I suppose is a sense of humor as well. But if you're kind of too formal and distant, then again, then you set yourself up as a target where people can sort of have a bit of a laugh at you. It's a kind of comedy trope, isn't it? That, you know, the self-important person gets taken down. So if you can try to kind of not be in on the joke, you shouldn't join people laughing at you, especially when it's unpleasant. That should never ever happen. But if they can have enough of a good time with you anyway, they don't need anybody else doing that, because you're funnier than them, you're cleverer than them. You know, you shouldn't need it in the first place. Sorry, this is a bit of a scattergun idea here, but just to summarize those, if I can, I'd say keep their attention by making sure your exercises are short and sharp. Prepare your explanation so it's clear to everybody. Set the rules, so have that class contract that they all agree to on the first day. And I would say those are the biggest single things. Oh, and the last one is, don't be worried about going upstairs. If you've got somebody who's, you know, out of control, then it's really not your problem. It absolutely isn't your problem. Eventually, it becomes the school's problem that they have to deal with. And I'll add one last one to that actually as well. If you do encounter individuals like that on your first day, then what were the school doing in the first place? Because no good school should be taking a new teacher on their first day and putting them in a class which is a chimps tea party. You should be having, as a new and inexperienced teacher, the school management should be looking to put you in a quiet, fairly decent, you know, intermediate, pre-intermediate, a fairly undemanding class with nice students to help you to embark on your teaching journey in the best way possible. You don't take a new teacher into a school and go, oh right, give them the nightmare class, and so, you know, all the other teachers. That's not how it works. So again, your expectations as to what a school should be asking for as well. Okay, I'm just going to bring up the QR code here. So please, if you've got a moment, if you can take that. I'm very happy to listen to any further questions if you have them, although I will have to be quick. I've got a daughter I have to pick up from her dance lesson in a few minutes. But thank you for those. Those were really good questions and quite demanding as well, which is probably why I answered them in the sort of largest 5-minute chunks rather than in concise and informative answers. Okay, but thank you very much. I hope you've got that QR code. Again, I'll just leave it up for a few seconds. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. And just before I sign off, just say you're absolutely on the right path doing this. This is an absolutely great career. If you do it for a year or 6 months, you'll get something out of it. And if you choose to continue, I very much hope you do so because you enjoy it and you continue to get better as you do it as well, which is, you know, the be all and end all, I think, of any career. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to log off now and hope to see you again on another webinar soon. Many thanks. Take care. Bye.